And now it's time for Impact Corner with Dr. G and Miss Thang.
Good morning, Dr. G. How are you?
Well, Dr. G is doing well, and how is Miss Thang this morning?
You know what? I am simply amazing. Is that better?
Wow. And I didn't even have to coach you. I am impressed.
Okay.
Anyway, well, good morning to my listening audience. We just want to jump right in this morning once my technology starts working for me. But before we get started, I know we've been talking a lot about leading while it hurts. And I know it can be challenging to do that. And so I thought I would ask Ms. Thang, I'm putting her on blast this morning. Have you been in a situation to either sit under leadership and the person you know they're hurting, and what does that look like? Or maybe yourself. Maybe you've been in a situation, or one or two, where you have to lead because you have to, but you're still hurt. How does that work for you?
You were definitely putting me on the spot. Yeah, I would say the second. For me, I just say, listen, I talk to myself, literally, and I would tell myself, okay, you only have a couple of minutes or a couple of days to have a pity party. So you still have to get up and go to work. You still have to do what you are designed or destined to do. So get it done, even if you have to smile through the pain.
Okay.
Now, might not, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's either you're going to stay in your bed for the rest of your life and do nothing, or you're just going to keep moving. And eventually, when you keep moving, I find when I keep moving, and I will work through whatever needs to be worked out. And what I can fix, I just leave it on the side.
Right. Well, I thank you for that, because that's a good segue into where I want to go this morning. And again, for those that are tuning in, we're talking about help her lead. And we're talking about she leads. She leads with strength, heart, and with excellence. And we also recognize that part of our DNA is that we have a level of tolerance. Now, some not as deep as others. In other words, some might say, well, I'm allergic to pain, Dr. G. And some might say that I can tolerate it. But the reality is, as Ms. Thang has just articulated, hurt comes with the territory of life. And sometimes we can agitate it, meaning that it's our behavior that creates that position of hurt. Perhaps, it's our behavior. So let me explain. You remember when you first start dating him. Let's use that for an example. And everybody told you, he's not the one. But you were in love. And so in love, you can't hear anything. And so you go ahead and you marry this individual. And while you're in this situation, you realize that love is not simply enough, because there are some missing pieces. And we also have learned, because Ms. Thang and I we're still in our 20s, but, we've learned a great deal through our lives, and that is we can't change people.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Can you just get out of my conversations over the weekend, please? Someone just said that over the weekend. You cannot change people. Okay, let me let you go back to your monologue.
So when we say that, and I know we have good intentions, ladies. I know we do. But if I could just, if he could just see my point of view, or if my children, we didn't do the homework when they were little, and now that they're adults, now we're figuring that we can come and change them. Well, they're kind of matured in that behavior. And so now I know I'm a woman of faith. With me and God together, we could do a lot of things, But the reality is, it's not me that's changing the individual. And perhaps my address to the situation, perhaps my lead in with that individual needs to shift, as opposed to just finding all the faults. Maybe I need to stop and take self-inventory. So again, we're talking about leading. And so some people get, when I talk about leadership, women in leadership, we have always been leaders. Why? Because we're incubators. We nurture life. Our role is to develop. And so we can't develop something we're not connected to. But I think after a while, things shift for us and life gets busy for us, and we can't do that maneuvering anymore because, life. And how do we handle life? How do we pull ourselves from this woe is me to saying, okay, you know what, there's some things, as Ms. Sang just articulated, there's some things that we can change within ourselves, and there's some things that are way beyond what we can do, and the milk has been spilt, if that's a correct word, and we got to learn how to move through it. And so what I wanted to do this morning, believe it or not, is start with a story, and Dr. G and her story. So just listen to the story and tell me what you pull out of it. So the story is told about this young woman who loved her husband and trusted him and would follow him anywhere with their two sons. And guess what? She did just that. She followed her husband. He hears that there's going to be a famine. He hears that there's going to be a recession in his town, and he doesn't want his family to be subjected to that. So he says, sweetheart, come on, let's go with me. Just trust me. And so she did. They packed up all that they had, and they had a good life, but, it was going to turn beyond their capacity. And so they traveled to this unknown town, a foreign place. She doesn't know the culture. She's a woman of Christian faith, but no one shared her same principles. She's surrounded by people, but somehow she still felt alone. And perhaps that's you today. In the midst of many, in the midst of where you are, there's people all around you, but you still feel lonely. Please allow me to reassure you today. Although you may feel lonely, know that you're not alone. You're never truly alone. So let's go back to the story. So somewhere in between her journey, her sons run off and marry women outside of the family faith. And then between the marriages and her feeling lonely, even though her family was with her, her husband dies. And then her sons die. And now she's left with nothing. She can't provide for herself. She's got her two daughter-in-laws that she's now responsible for. She's learned how to love them. In other words, she's learned how to respect them. She never asked them to assimilate or be part of what her and her family were. She accepted them because her sons accepted them. And that's part of the community we're trying to create. We cannot expect people to be just like you, because if they are, it's going to be a very sad environment. I didn't say that out loud, but anyway. So let's go back to the story. So when she experienced such loss, and this loss was death, and something about losing, when it evolves around death, it is so final. Now, hear what I'm saying. Divorce, you say is final. The breakup, you say is final. The moving out of the house, you say is final. But you know what? You can still bump into these individuals, even though they're with their new relationship partner. But it's done. She has no one except this one daughter-in-law that decided to stick with her. And now she has to think beyond herself, as Ms. Sang articulated, self-talk. And maybe the self-talk wasn't as healthy, but the reality was she had someone depending on her. So if you're listening to me this morning, and I can imagine how difficult or how challenging it could be, like you feel like you have no one, but there are people around you that depend on you. You may not have children, so that might be an easy out. But when you come to work, there's people that depend on you. In your community, there's people that depend on you. But in this case, this woman has her daughter-in-law, and now she has responsibility of protecting this daughter-in-law and feeding and really not even feeding, securing food, etc., for another person outside of herself. This new circumstance forces her not to waddle in a space of self-pity. Something inside of her causes her to rise up, and she identifies a plan for their survival. And again, no doubt you may be hurting, but I believe even though it feels as if the weight of the world is on your shoulders, I want you to look yourself in the mirror and remind yourself. And this is what I do. Ms. Thang, she says she has self-talk. I tell myself, girl, you are powerful and you are resourceful. I may be lonely, but I'm not alone. All resources have been given to me to help me to be successful. Now, for those of Christian faith, in one sentence, I can say all those words, and that is, girl, you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. So I encourage us today to simply redirect that energy by taking your eyes off self and start noticing that there's a person sitting right next to you. Help her lead. Redirect our actions or your actions and focus on someone else. Here's part of my journey, and I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist. I've said this many times. But life has bumped me around a bit. Some of it I've agitated, and some, well, I'll leave it like that. I really didn't have any problems. I found myself, most helpful because when I had the conversation, I really didn't have any problems, or my problems were so minor compared to theirs or the person I was talking to. And yes, the pain is still there, but it's our focus I would like for us to consider. You dwell on the pain, it will hurt even more. Redirect the focus on helping others, our pain subsides. But Dr. G, what happens if the person doesn't want to be helped? I believe that when someone is really struggling or really hurting, they rest in a space of avoidance and protection. And they avoid places or conversations that require exposure or show their vulnerability. And even if you've heard them articulate they want to be left alone, that's their protective mechanism kicking in. So instead of trying to fix, why not show empathy and concern and help them, not from a position of authority, but simply offering support. Something as simple as cooking dinner for the family. Oh boy. Now, if you're not a cook, this is not the time to start experimenting. Maybe order takeout and drop it off to them without any strings attached. Remember, our goal is to shift our communities one person at a time. By helping her to lead with strength, heart, and excellence, then the community thrives. We hurt, yes, but we're learning to redirect our focus because similar to the woman in the story, you have a daughter-in-law who's depending on you. Okay, ladies, just know we have this. But just before I close, I would like to extend a couple of shout-outs to some women that are blazing a trail, that are helping her to lead. Mrs. Ethel Liverpool at Paget Primary, where the students did and prepared a comprehensive acknowledgement of our local African leaders and influencers. A warm welcome back to my sister and friend and parishioner, Mrs. Patricia Pugson Nisbet, who has blazed a trail in our community. I believe she received an international award called She is Legend. These ladies, Govern International Group, identifies them as women who lead with strength, heart, and with power excellence. Ladies, your community says, we see your contributions and say thank you. To the celebrants over the weekend, the Hortons and Dr. Duranda Green, To the ladies in particular, we also acknowledge that these two outstanding women have embraced and demonstrated the concept of help her lead, as they have led and still lead with strength, heart, and with excellence. This focus is on women, but it would be so remiss of me not to give a shout out to my former homeroom teacher, Mr. Robert Horton, who acknowledged my exceptional leadership skills my first week at the Barclay Institute by awarding me a week's detention for something I did. But that's a story for another time. Know that you are the composer with the pen. Begin transcribing your destiny. And we're going to go back, try to anyhow, to lead with a topic, leading It So Hurts Because It's Now Just Me. So the nuggets for me, and I'll end on this. Dwell on the pain, it hurts even more. Redirect the focus on helping others, our pain subsides. Remember, hit me up on my social media, Facebook at Godwin International, Twitter at Godwin INTL, email me, info@godwininternational.org, or LinkedIn, Georgette Prime-Godwin. So Ms. Singh, I was just a couple of minutes over, but I just felt the need to go back because the hurting piece, how do we swim through that? How do we navigate through that? And everybody has some methodologies. Hit me up. Let me know how you do it so we can share it with other women so that we can help her lead with strength, heart, and with excellence.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. G. Next week, of course.
Yes, ma'am.
Every Monday at 7:45.
That's the time.
All right.
See you. Have a wonderful day, Bermuda. Be impactful, meaning be intentional with what you do today.
Have a great day.
You too, love.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.